Open your banking app right now. Look at the number in your checking account. That number feels like the truth about where you stand financially. But the real answer is far stranger than that number, because your actual financial future is already being written by something invisible, something that doesn't show up on any screen you've ever looked at. You're 22. Maybe you just got your first real paycheck and felt that strange mix of pride and panic when you saw how much disappeared into rent and taxes before you even touched it. Nobody hands you a manual saying the next 10 years of decisions will matter more than almost any other decade of your financial life. Here's the number that should stop you: $50 a week. Less than most people spend on subscriptions they forgot they have. Invest that every week starting at 22 in a simple low-cost index fund, averaging historical market returns. And the math says you retire a millionaire, not eventually. The math doesn't care about your opinion, it just runs. How is that possible on $50 a week? The answer is compound growth. Wharton finance professor Jeremy Siegel spent decades studying stock market returns across more than 2 centuries of data. Despite wars, depressions, and every crash in between, a diversified stock portfolio has historically returned around 7% a year after inflation. 7% doesn't sound dramatic, but compounding for 40 years, it behaves like a snowball rolling downhill, picking up more snow with every rotation until its size has almost nothing to do with how it started. Picture 2 people. Person A starts investing $50 a week at 22. Person B starts the same amount at 32. By 65, person A has put in maybe $15,000 more total, but ends up with nearly double the final balance. Not because they invested more, because they gave the snowball 10 extra years to roll. You've probably absorbed the idea that wealth comes from a big salary or a lucky break. Researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko surveyed real millionaires across the United States for their landmark study on wealth-building behavior. Most weren't high earners with extravagant lifestyles. They were ordinary income earners who lived below their means and invested consistently for decades. Many drove modest cars well into their 50s, long after they could have afforded better. The wealth wasn't loud, it was quiet and repetitive. Why does that feel uncomfortable to hear? Because you live in a culture that rewards the appearance of success far more visibly than the practice of it. You see the coworker's new car, not their investment statement. The visible signals of money and the actual mechanics of building it are almost completely disconnected. Here's the more counterintuitive part. You'd assume professional investors consistently beat the average person. They don't, not by much. Researchers at Dalbar have tracked investor behavior for years, comparing actual returns investors get to the returns of the funds they're in. The gap is staggering. Investors underperform their own investments, not because the investments fail, but because they panic sell during downturns and chase performance during rallies. The market does its slow job of compounding. People interrupt it out of fear, often the most expensive decision of their financial life. So the real skill at 22 isn't picking the perfect investment. It's building a habit boring enough that you forget you're doing it. It requires an automatic transfer set up once, and enough patience to leave it alone while headlines scream about crashes that come and go like weather. Picture your life at 65 if you start at 22 instead of 32. It's the difference between working because you choose to and working because you have no other option. It's walking past the bakery, picking up bread without doing math in your head. Not because you're rich, but because 30 years of a $50 habit quietly removed that math from your life. The $50 was never really about the $50. It was about removing your future self from a conversation about scarcity before it ever started. So open that banking app again. Look at the number. It feels small today, but the real answer is far stranger than it looks, because that same small number, moved automatically every week starting right now, is the entire reason your life at 65 could look nothing like you ever expected.